Hello, welcome. We're so glad that you're here. And where are you? You're with Teaching High School Chem's webinar titled Five Strategies to Boost Student Engagement. I'm Ariel Anderton. I'm going to be your support throughout this webinar. I'm about to introduce our speaker, webinar presenter for today, Jeff Anderton. And I wanted to just reassure you that you're in the right place if you are new to teaching or new to teaching chemistry. You're in the right place if you are struggling to keep students in your class engaged. And you're in the right spot even if you're an experienced chemistry teacher, but you want to keep improving, keep learning yourself. This is a collective, collaborative place for us to share how to keep our students engaged. So you're in the right spot. Thank you for joining us. There's a juicy bonus just for being here. So stay on and Jeff will give that to you. If you have any questions, if you go down to the participants button and click it, and then there's a chat right inside of there. Go ahead and chat those questions or comments. I'm going to collect them and make sure that Jeff addresses them for you. And so, who is our presenter? Jeff Anderton. He has been doing chemistry since high school up till today. That's 27 years of chemistry experience. He's also been teaching. Well, first, let me go back to his degrees. He's a chemical engineer. That's his degree from college, from Georgia Tech. And he also has a secondary science education degree from Kennesaw State with a chemistry focus. And then he's been teaching all these sciences and all the maths with the expertise in chemistry for more than 15 years now. He also has been an academic dean and interim headmaster. So he's bringing that other angle to you as well. He knows how schools work. He knows what it's like inside and the external systems inside schools on you guys. And he's my husband. For 11 years, we have a 5-year-old son and a 7-month-old baby. So here he is. We're excited for what you have prepared for us, and what can we look forward to?
All right, so I'm glad y'all are taking some time out of your weekend to take some time to learn and to grow and better yourself. And so today, that's what I want to do, is I want to offer information and things to help you grow as a chemistry teacher. That's what we're all about at Teaching High School Chem. We're about equipping you and supporting you to grow you as a chemistry teacher, and then to really help you have even more time outside of school. And so with that, I will get started with our presentation. And so today we're looking at 5 strategies to boost student engagement. And this is definitely with a chemistry focused. So I'm definitely going that direction. And it's also how to do it and how to have this without having to entertain them, be that clown, that jester who, or be their best friend, or having to be too easy. And it really, I think a lot of times we feel that when we are trying to get our students to engage and pay attention, that we have to do one or the other. We have to find some cool demo activity that they're going to love, or we have to find some way of dumbing it down so they can follow it. So once again, kind of like Ariel mentioned, you're in the right place if you're new to teaching, or if you're an experienced teacher, either way. One of the things I love about teaching is that we always get a new quarter or a new semester or a new year to try something new, a new area to grow in. Now, you're in the right place if only some of your kids are engaged and the rest of them look like this teddy bear. Just kind of, we've all had those days where our kids are just kind of zoned out. And so just kind of give you some tips on how to help with that. You're in the right place if your grades kind of look like what I call an inverted bell curve. Inverted bell curve is where you have A's, kind of your best and your brightest, are over here getting A's. And then the bulk of your students are kind of in this low B to C range, and then it trails off into the bad grades over here. There's very few grades in the middle. The low A to high B range is kind of empty. And to me, that's a symptom of student engagement, that we need to do something with this group over here to move them up to close that gap. Because in my mind, if chemistry can be taught in an engaging way and in such a way to ensure that we get a good normal bell curve. If you hear things from your students like, it's too hard, I'm confused, I don't like you, I don't like your class, those are all symptoms of student engagement issues. Something's going on in how class is going that's creating problems. All right. So here's what we'll be learning. We're going to learn about what are the three main areas where stuff comes up that derail student engagement. And we're going to focus on those three, and out of those three, we're going to flesh out 5 strategies. So the first one has to do with communication. So this is how to structure your lesson to boost student engagement and keep them focused without being too easy and without being an entertainer. So that's the first area, just communication. How do we teach? How do we do our lessons? The second area is how to basically take proactive steps to limit the impact of distractions. That's critically important. Distractions are just part of teaching. And so what we've got to do to limit the impact they have on our classroom so that we can help kids stay focused, because they're going to happen. So what are we going to do? We're going to look at strategies there. And then how to grow engagement by building relationships with our students and to help them grow as people and be involved in our classroom as people. And we'll look at that. So make sure you stay to the end. I'm going to, as soon as we finish, everybody who's attended, I'll be emailing you a PDF of these slides. And then I'll also be giving you my full lesson plans. So for my covalent unit, so when I say full lesson plans, I mean my teaching notes, some instructional videos on how to teach covalent nomenclature, all my handouts, quizzes, review sheet, tests, all of that is yours to have and yours to use. Make as many copies you need, use it however you need to. All right, so my story. I was that kid growing up who just gave my teachers fits. You know, really, really smart, but really, really lazy and definitely not organized. I would be, I don't think I turned in an unwrinkled paper until sometime in high school. You know, it just wasn't my thing. I kept everything literally, I didn't have a folder, I had a book bag. One book, just had everything in it. Don't know how my teachers put up with me, but I was that kid who I would do homework like the 5 minutes in between classes when I would do homework. And so that was just kind of how I went through a lot of school. And, so I would pay attention in class because I learned that I was an auditory learner, that if I learned in class, if I paid attention in class, then I would be good to go. Then I wouldn't really have to study a whole lot for the test. And that's what I kind of learned for me. So I learned how to be engaged for me. When I got to college, I saw some good examples of what not to do. Georgia Tech being a research institution, we had teachers that were better researchers than they were teachers. And so, for example, I had this one teacher, Physical Chemistry 1, which is anything and everything you never wanted to know about electrons. An entire course on electrons. And the teacher was just brilliant. I mean, just off the charts brilliant. But he couldn't communicate with anybody else who wasn't on his level. And so he tried to teach poor little undergrads, 19, 20-year-olds, anything and everything they never wanted to know about electrons. And it was brutal. I mean, I busted my butt in that class and I made a 54. Yeah, I made a 54. It's the second highest grade in the class. Highest grade was a 60. So I made an A with a 54, because the guy just did not know how to teach. It was just brutal. Then I had another professor who did an hour and a half class at 8 o'clock in the morning with PowerPoint slides and the lights turned down. And I'm not one for falling asleep in class, but I would fall asleep in that class until I made a C on the first test. And I was like, oh, crud. I don't even know if it was a C. I don't know if it was that high. It was bad. I think it may have been an F, maybe my only F on a test in college. And I freaked out. And so I would literally go to the store and buy packs of those little red cinnamon discs, and I would literally like be chomping on them throughout class just to keep me alert and awake as I went through class. Just finding some way to stay engaged. Went to office hours, which I rarely did, that kind of thing. But I was always on the lookout for things that I appreciated. Like I remembered my 2 college professors who took the time to learn everybody's names. I had one professor, literally, first thing he did on the first day of class is he walked up to every row of every table of students, and he had a Polaroid camera. He took a picture, pulled it out, and laid it down on the table with a Sharpie and said, write your names next to your face. And he literally would spend his office hours learning our names with our faces, and it's just like, wow. So when I started teaching, that's what I did. It's like every year within the first week, I committed that within the first week, it's 100 new kids, but I'm going to learn everybody's name in the first week. So every time I see them, I'm calling them by their name. They're like, you know who I am? I'm like, yeah. Because then I'll run into kids who are like 2 years out of my class, and I'll be like, hey, Sydney, how you doing? And she's like, wow, you remember my name? I'm like, yes. Like I remember stuff like that. But my overarching themes that I've learned really practically in teaching is this. 1, everybody's style is going to be different. I am a very laid back teacher. I'm just kind of laid back in how I go about things in my classroom. I've seen other teachers that are very structured and very organized. Some teachers are more straight lecture, some teachers are a lot of hands-on activities. There's a lot of different styles and ways that we can do things. Some people are very bubbly and touchy-feely, and I'm not. So we have all these different styles, but these strategies for boosting student engagement aren't dependent upon your style. I'm not going to ask you to be something that you're not. I'm asking you to think of these strategies. A lot of them are just, well, we'll see as we go along, but just they're not dependent upon that. And as with a lot of strategies, we need different tools in our toolbox. These are the most general forms of these that I've found that work, and I'm going to kind of break down some more specific strategies underneath them. Think of those as kind of your individual tools. What works one year with a group of students may not work so well the next year with students. And so we've got to kind of play with that and see. All right. So most oftentimes when I hear about classroom management or student engagement in class, what I'm hearing is teachers complaining about students. And they're like, oh, Susie just can't stop chatting in the back of class, or she's always doing this, or she's always doing that. And what I find and what I've come to hear when they do that is it's really a question of who has the power in the classroom. Does Susie have the power, or does the teacher have the power? Because there's something a mentor of mine told me years ago was, if you make something 100% somebody else's fault, you then have 0% of the power to fix it. Because if it's all Susie's fault, if it's all Susie, then only Susie can fix it. And let's face it, Susie's 15, 16, 17, and all she wants to do is talk. She's not going to fix it because she doesn't think it's a problem. But if I, as a teacher, say, well, no. I have power in my classroom. I can decide what's going to happen, and then I can speak into it, and I can speak into Susie, and I can put structure and boundaries and things around her. I have control of my classroom. It's now that part of that problem is what I can have power over, and I can do something about. And so that's important as we talk about this, and that kind of is undergirding what I'm saying with these strategies are, what are the ways that we can take back control of our classrooms and take control of our students' learning? Because I'm a firm believer that, yeah, the final choice is with the student, but that when we exercise these strategies, 95% of our students will pay attention. And it's only the rare ones that we've got to deal with, to be honest with you. And so these are just kind of best practices to take control of our classrooms. All right, so as I mentioned earlier, so the 3 areas we're going to look at: communication of content, distractions, and then the student-teacher relationship. And those are all going to be kind of critical things that we're going to look at. So with communication. First thing I want you to do is I want you to picture something. All right, you have paid a whole bunch of money to fly to Paris, France, and you want to go see the Cathedral of Notre Dame. And you even know enough that it's not Notre Dame, it's Notre Dame. Like, you know how it's supposed to be pronounced in Paris. And so you spend money to hire a tour guide. And your tour guide comes out and she's carrying a map. And she says to you, now, which way to Notre Dame? Is it this way? Wait, where is it? Think, what would be going through your mind? You would be so dismissive of that guide. Like, wow, this person doesn't know anything. They don't even know enough to know that it's Notre Dame and not Notre Dame. You know, like, they just don't know anything. Like, you're dismissing them. You're not going to be engaged with them. You're not going to pay attention to them. And so the first strategy is, really the most basic and the most fundamental. You have to know what you're talking about, and you have to be prepared for that class. Kids can smell it a mile away when you're winging it. And every time you have to pause to think about what you're going to do next, they're going to start chatting. And they smell that. They know that. They know when a teacher doesn't get it. I've had that teacher when I was in middle school. My 7th grade science teacher, a friend of mine and I, we had to correct her all the time. And I think the only reason we even paid attention at all is because we were that type who liked to be technically correct. And we actually got a kick out of having to correct her all the time. Otherwise, we would have just zoned out and just said, we know more than she does. But I think that's what happens. If we don't really come into class prepared, then we need to do something about it. And so kind of two sub things underneath this. We need to do the things that are going to help us be prepared resource-wise. Like, what do you need to do to know the content, especially with chemistry? Recent research shows that 60% of chemistry teachers don't have a chemistry background, meaning that 60% of chemistry teachers are like biology teachers, or just a general science teacher or a math teacher who's being asked to teach chemistry. Heck, 3% of chemistry teachers have elementary childhood education degrees. They're elementary school teachers being asked to teach chemistry. That's kind of scary. Of course they don't know the content. And of course they need help with the content. And so you need to find the resources that are out there. And, and so that's one of the things that we are here for as teaching high school chem, to help you with the resource side of this. And I'll get to that later. But you also need to find time to get prepped. Now, as a teacher, like Ariel mentioned, I have over 15 years of teaching experience. I've been an administrator. I get it. You're going to have those days where all heck broke out at home and you're just not ready for the day. Those days happen. And we need to kind of find some way of giving ourselves time to get prepared and be. And so a lot of times I will do one of a couple of things. One, if I'm in a topic where I can kind of get the kids talking a little bit, and then we can go down a rabbit trail, I'll let them take me down a rabbit trail. I will just do a general cool science topics discussion, or we'll talk about something going on in world news, and we'll just talk about it and how it affects them. And they think they got me off topic. Little do my kids know that they never got me that far off topic unless I wanted them to. And so that was always kind of one of my tools in my bag. Another one was kind of teachable moments, science teachable moments. Like, I have a couple of good YouTube channels that I like, Veritasium, Smarter Every Day, Physics Girl. These are good science websites where, if I'm pushed to shove, I can show a video and then we can talk about it. And like, there's one about 2 weeks ago that came out on kind of the role of perseverance and tenacity in science. And just a great discussion with students to be able to discuss that science is not just about curiosity, but about perseverance. And so stuff like that I would use to kind of be like, all right, I'm not prepped today, but if I do this, then I know I'm going to be ready tomorrow. Now, those are okay every now and then. That becomes a consistent pattern that you need to do, then you need to take some extra steps. You need to find some way of finding time. For me, it's in the morning. I'd rather get up at 5 in the morning and get working through lesson plans and getting stuff done than staying up late at night. My brain doesn't work late at night. So you got to find time to do those things. All right, second picture I want you to picture. So this is a market in Croatia, which is in Central Europe. And so, this woman's selling tomatoes, cucumbers, carrots, radishes, some lettuce greens, that kind of stuff. So you want to buy the ingredients to make a salad. And you got kind of one of two scenarios that could happen. One, you don't know Croatian. At which point in time, buying the salad then becomes very, very hard and very, very difficult. Because you don't speak the same language, and so it just becomes hard. Or the second option is you speak a little bit of Croatian, which is where I was. I lived there for a year. I spoke a little bit, but most likely she'd be either using words I don't know, or she'd be talking so fast that I'd be like a deer in headlights, just like, whoa, that's just too many Croatian words. I don't even know I'm not even sure where one word ended and the next one began. And so we can kind of picture those two things. And so the same thing can kind of happen with our students. That instead of it being a fruit table, we're talking about our chemistry lesson. Because sometimes we can fail to speak their language and they think it's too hard or they think it's too confusing. When students use words or phrases like it's too hard or it's too confusing, what they're saying is there's a breakdown in communication. Something's going on there, and that's what these next two strategies are all about. So strategy number 2, speak their language, and I mean the student's language. So part of that is we have to build off of what they already know. So what did you cover last week? What was in the last unit? Or what did they learn in physical science a year or two ago? Or what are they just, are they Harry Potter fans? What's the big thing that's around? Like if, like when a Marvel movie comes out, you can relate it to a Marvel movie. You can relate it to, whatever. And so you can kind of use whatever they know. Like you have kids that are big football fans or sports fans or whatever. You can relate some way to a chemistry topic to that. You're building off of what they already know. Here, the builders on this building would never build the 30th floor until they built the 29th. If you try to move on to the 30th floor before you build the 29th, it's not going to connect. And kids need our help to make that connection. Use illustrations like I just did with you. The one with the tour guide and the one with trying to buy salad ingredients in a market in the foreign country. Those are illustrations, but those are things that you could picture in your mind. So then when I take them and apply them to what I'm trying to teach you, you're like, oh, that's what he means. It also evokes kind of an emotional response and helps with connection there too. But illustrations are a great way to do things. You can do illustrations also where you have the kids do an activity or something in class. Like, what would happen if you gave your kids random poker chips or something, and you gave them random number between 0 and 8, and said, hey, either you need to get 8 or you need to have 0. And let them kind of go around and learn how to trade and share and give and take. And you've just taught them the octet rule. They didn't even know it, but now you've given them a physical way of seeing it. Boom, they got it, because you've given them an illustration. Then we need to avoid technical terms and technical definitions. I love this word. Perspicuity or perspicuous. I love it because it's ironic. It means something is easy to understand. And that is so critical when we are communicating with our students, that they because something may be perspicuous, but if they don't know what the word perspicuous means, they're lost. So try to come up with the easiest, simplest way to define what you're talking about to the extent that's needed. If you do have a chemistry background, a Chem 1 class is not the place where you need to be technically correct. It's a place where you need to define things in the way that it's easiest for them to get. If you want technically correct, that's an AP chemistry class or a college chemistry class. For example, back to the octet rule. I don't teach, when I do Lewis dot structures, I don't do the things that violate the exception to the octet rule. Either a reduced or an expanded octet. I don't do those. because it confuses the kids. Right now it's General Chem 1. I just want them to learn the basics. And so I get rid of the technical definition stuff of these exceptions, and I'm like, here's the basic meaning. Can you draw a Lewis dot diagram of ammonia, of methane, of water, sodium dioxide, sulfur dioxide, sulfur trioxide? Do you understand resonance? Like I try to keep it within a very simple realm of the basics that they need to know and understand. Right, so speaking their language is strategy 2. Strategy 3, make it digestible. There's the old saying out there that how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so this goes back to, we've been talking about Lewis dot structure. So covalent nomenclature, or nomenclature as a whole. I tutored a kid a year ago, or a couple years ago, who his chemistry teacher covered covalent nomenclature, ionic nomenclature, and acid nomenclature with the test, I think in 11 or 12 class days, just over 2 weeks. And the kid I was tutoring had a learning disability, but he was bright. He wasn't dumb, but he had a learning disability, and he just couldn't. And I think most kids, that's just too fast. There's just no way to, that's trying to eat the elephant all at once. It doesn't work. And so one of the things we need to do is we need to break it into bite-sized pieces, but then we also need to give them those pieces slow enough that they're able to chew and digest before we give them the next piece. That foundation gets laid before we lay the next one. You may be wondering why there's a picture of a cake for this. The reason I chose this, I love baking shows. I don't know why. I'm not a fan. I prefer to cook than bake. I'm not a cake maker. It's just not my thing, but I like watching when people make cakes. And these baking shows, there's always a time limit, and they're always rushing to get done. And sometimes we get that way too when we're teaching. And so they're rushing, and so somebody invariably tries to put that icing layer in between the 2 layers of cake while the cake's still warm, and it's always a disaster. Because when the cakes are warm, what they do is they melt the icing, and then it no longer gives any structural support, and then the cake slips and falls apart, and you just get this mess everywhere. And that's what happens with our students. If we try to move on and put the next layer on before this one's cool, it just gets messy. And what our students end up saying is, I'm confused. It's confusing, or it's hard. Usually they're going to say, I'm confused, or something along those lines. I don't get it. Okay? That's generally a cue to us. Whoa, wait a second. We need to take a step back. Okay. All right. Do you get the piece before this? No? Okay, let's fix that. Or if they do get that piece, then all right, let's build on that. You see how this built on it? We have to listen to our students. Don't just listen to their grades. Don't wait for homework grades or quiz grades or test grades to tell you something's wrong. We need to be interacting with our students enough to be like, all right, something's not right here. Why are you making that mistake? Why are half of you making this mistake? All right, let's back up. Let's fix this problem. And we need to be able to do that kind of stuff. We've got to be able to assess where they are and go slow enough for them to pick up. Because my pacing when I teach my chemistry class changes a little bit every year. Because one year, one group may get this faster than another group, but then they may get this other thing slower than that group. And so it's always a mix. I'm trying to pay attention to where my students are and how they're performing. If they're getting bored, I go faster. If they're starting to get confused, I slow down. I'm always trying to read where they are and what I need to do. And it can even change period to period sometimes. And so I've got to kind of be aware of what's going on. And it's a little more work on our side, but it's being proactive. It's important that we review and summarize. And what I mean by this is the end of every class period, I review. Because what I've done is I've taken my concepts and I've broken them into these bite-sized pieces. But if I don't give my kids it's kind of like they have a bunch of puzzle pieces. And if I don't show them the picture on the lid of the box, they can't make the puzzle pieces fit together. And so that's what reviewing and summarizing is. It's helping my kids take all these bite-sized pieces I've given them, all these puzzle pieces, and assemble them into the whole. So at the end of a class period, I review, hey, this is what we've done today. This is what's expected of you on homework. Here's what you need to be looking out for. Or I'm going to do review at the beginning of the period. I'm going to review what we've done previously and then move into where we need to be going. And so when you do that, eventually you get to the end and you're able to put it all together and just put a nice little pretty little bow on it, and they're ready to go for their test. That's important. All right, moving into the second area, distractions. Managing distractions is just critical for teaching because we have a lot of them. Assemblies, dismissals, field trips, half days, tests in other classes, either they're about to have a test or they just got test grades back. Just student issues or life issues or world issues outside of classroom, and student behavior. So these are all issues that can affect us in class. And so strategy 4 is we've got to take control of these distractions. We've got to, just kind of like we have to take control of our content, how we're delivering content, in order to deliver it well to our students, we have to do this too. We have to manage the distractions in our classroom. So for example, when kids are going to miss class for activities, or they've been out sick, or they're leaving early for sports, or whatever, we need to have clear expectations. But we also kind of need to go with the flow. Like, so half your last period class of the day on Friday is going to be gone because they're the cheerleaders and the football players that are leaving for their away football game. You got to kind of go with the flow. I mean, you could make a big fuss out of it, make a bigger deal out of it. And if anything, I think that makes the problem bigger. If we go with the flow and try to just worry about controlling the things we can control, then that works well. If you have things like, kids are going to be missing the day of prom because they're going to be out, give a really simple quiz and make it their drop quiz. But do something with that class. Don't just throw it away, but you can manage the distraction and go with the flow. But we got to communicate expectations. When students miss my class, they're 16, 15, 16, 17. They're old enough to be responsible for what they missed. This is the day and age of smartphones. Their friends can take a picture of their notes and send it to them. They can read it on the bus on the way back from the soccer game or the football game or the basketball game. They can, if they're absent, somebody can once again take a picture of the notes, send it to them. They can read over it. They have questions to ask me the next day. If a kid comes in the next day and they're kind of like, I don't know what to do. Wait, we had class yesterday? Yes, we had class yesterday, and you can get the stuff from somebody. My sympathy for them is kind of minimal because they know the expectations. But if someone comes in and say, hey, Mr. Anderton, Johnny sent me the notes. I read over them. I'm kind of confused here. Score. I'll help them out. And we can fix that pretty quickly. Otherwise, I'm going to ask them to come in before or after school, that kind of thing. But we communicate our expectations. This is also good for like those days like the last school I was at had pep rallies every Friday during football season and for every home JV game on Thursdays. So we end up like with 16 pep rallies, 16 dress days where they're doing something silly like Cowboys and Indians or aliens or Disney, whatever. It's crazy. And kids are going to be a little bit wilder, but I set my expectations of, it may be Cowboy and Indian Day, but it's still chemistry class. You need to be focused in doing your thing here in class. Sorry. Can we have an off day? Can we have a rest day? No. I mean, I'm that teacher who, the day before Thanksgiving break and the day before spring break, I'm giving a quiz. because it's a school day. We're doing something. We're going to take a grade. We're going to, and I usually do a quiz so I don't have to teach new stuff that they're going to forget, but I can still assess them in some way. Part of dealing with distractions is dealing with the elephant in the room. This is really a big deal for when things are happening outside of our classroom, but we still have a normal class. So, they have a big U.S. history test. They just got back their U.S. history test and nobody did well on it. And there's some big world event or local event going on. Those things, they'll kind of create this buzz in the background of your classroom if you don't talk about it and deal with it. And so I generally try to take 5-10 minutes, and anytime there's just one of these background outside distractions going on, I want to take 5-10 minutes to deal with it. So, if they are distracted about a test that's coming up, I'll be like, all right, y'all, I know you have that big, huge history test coming up later today. If I see you studying while I'm teaching, those notes are mine until the end of the period. But here's the deal. I know that's important to you. I know you're stressed out. So let's make a deal. If you can stay focused and we can bust through this lesson as fast as possible, any free time we have at the end is yours to study. That'll be the most engaged class you'll ever have. Because you laid it out. You said, hey, I know, hey, there's this big elephant in the room. It's called a U.S. history test. Let's deal with it. Let's focus on it. Let's knock it out. So, and then they'll be so focused. And if one of their friends starts chatting up, they're like, shh, we got to study. We want time to study. Stop. And they'll keep each other focused, and I'll be able to get through the lesson really quick. And then they'll have a little bit of time to study. And it's a win-win. I got to do my thing, and they got to do their thing. And, that's a big deal. Or if there's some big event coming on, because it kind of goes with this next thing about teachable moments. If there's a world event going on, maybe you need to take the time to talk about it. A local event, I'm thinking like, the Black Lives Matter stuff, 9/11, around us, like hurricanes, we're in Mississippi, so like if a hurricane's coming, kids are going to be kind of talking about that. So we can take a couple of minutes, talk about it, and then we can move on. But you take your teachable moments. So the example I gave earlier where kids are complaining about how everybody did on a test. I sometimes take a moment, I'm like, all right, how should you approach that teacher to talk about it? Trying to coach them on how to approach an authority figure that they disagree with in a respectful manner. Because kids don't know how to do that. Heck, there are a lot of adults who don't know how to do that. But I try to teach them. Or if there's just something going on, because when it comes down to it, there are a lot of things that are more important than my chemistry class when it comes down to it. Sometimes I need to talk about a teachable moment the whole class period, like when 9/11 happened. We need to take some time. I had one of my students whose brother was on a bridge and saw the plane hit the Pentagon, and we had to talk about it. That was my first year teaching, was 9/11. And yeah, that was crazy. Probably about halfway through my teaching career, it was probably about year 6 or 7. One of my former students' father was killed in a tragic car accident. And I had all of her friends in my chemistry class because she had been at our school the year before. And I remember one of my students came up to me and said, hey, we know we've got this, and I can't remember if it was a lesson or a test. I don't remember which it was. But I just remember them coming up to me and saying, can we miss your class to go be with her? And to me, it was a no-brainer. Yes, go. Was that a distraction to my class? Absolutely. Did we miss a lesson that day? Absolutely. But was the life lesson worth more? Yes. For me to be able to tell my kids, hey, that friend who's hurting and grieving needs you more than I need you in my chemistry class, that's huge. That's just ginormous even. And because, it's probably 9 years ago. Those kids don't remember what I would have talked about that day. We covered it later. I doubt those kids, I think it was limiting reactants, something like it. For some reason, I think that's what it was. My kids don't remember limiting reactants now. But my kids do remember that they got to be there for their friend. And that friend certainly remembers that her friends were there for her. That's the kind of stuff that sticks with a kid way after they get outside of my classroom. And that's always been important to me, that I teach the whole kid. All right, consistent consequences. One of the distractions that you're going to have is going to be student behavior. And like I said, I'm pretty laid back in my classroom, so being that mean, lowering the hammer teacher was kind of hard for me to learn how to do. But I had to learn that that's part of caring for my students is I've got to care for all the rest of the students and not allow one to be a distraction. I'm not going to let one be the one who disrupts everything. And so for me, it's sending a kid out in the hall. If you disrupt my class, I warn you, you disrupt it again, you go in the hall. I finish teaching, get them started on classwork assignment that I'm working on. And then I go out in the hall, have a discussion with the kid who was disruptive, and then bring him back in, and then maybe give him a really quick synopsis of what we went over, or ask him to get his notes from a friend. But sometimes that solitary separation is enough to start, and if I have to do that multiple times, then we start bringing in administrators. But for the most part, that's how I do things. If I have an entire class that's being disruptive, I'll warn them and say, stop. If they do it again, the second warning usually goes something like this. All right, guys, you are making it very difficult for me to teach this class. So you got a choice. A, you can let me finish teaching this class. Or B, you can figure it out on your own. Your choice. And usually the kids will quiet down and they'll let me finish teaching. Twice during my teaching career, I've had kids choose to keep going. At which point in time I said, it looks like you made your choice. You can figure it out on your own. Here's the classwork sheet. Here's the homework sheet. Homework will be graded tomorrow. I'm going to go sit down on my desk. And then it's up to them. Depending upon when this happens, either at the end of the class or the beginning of the next period class, we're going to have a conversation about what happened and why. And usually I won't have another problem out of that class again after that. That method's a little extreme, and you got to have good administrative support to pull it off. But it's effective. Hey, you got to make a choice. Here's the consequence. And when they don't get it, because it's chemistry. Chemistry is not like history, where you can just read the history book and memorize some facts. It just doesn't work that way. Chemistry is not one of those things you can self-teach very easily. So that's a big deal. But all of these, especially the teachable moments one, is important because it leads into the final thing. The final strategy for helping with student management is dealing with the student-teacher relationship. Our relationship with our students is the foundation under everything else. It is the foundation under our content and how we communicate our content. Are we speaking their language? Are we going slow enough and in small enough pieces for them to get? It's the piece that undergirds how we deal with distractions. And so my strategy here is very simply this. Pursue the heart of your students. Once again, I'm not the huggy, touchy-feely, fuzzy teacher. Not my style. I'm the sarcastic teacher. And that's my style. And I'm the one who likes to joke around with my kids and be a little sarcastic or a lot sarcastic at times. And that's my teaching style. I'm not the one to go out there and do high fives. I'm not trying to be their best friends. My students don't know what my family and I did last weekend. I don't have those conversations with my students. I have those conversations with my coworkers, not my students. But I still try to pursue their hearts. I try to pursue relationships with them. And it starts with the golden rule. The golden rule has been around for 2,000 years for a reason. Do unto others how you would have them do unto you. Treat others how you would have them treat you. This is so critical in the teaching. So many times as an administrator, I had one teacher in particular who would always be like, my students don't respect me. And then I went in and observed, and he treated his students like crap. Like, no wonder they don't respect you, because you don't respect them. When we treat our students like they're a nuisance, guess what? They're going to act like nuisances. If we treat our kids like immature little kids, guess what? They're going to act like immature little kids. But when I treat my kids with respect, guess what? Respect flows back most of the time. That it's this reflective thing. And I've had the same guy is kind of like, it's like, but they should respect me first. I'm like, whoa, stop. They're kids, you're an adult. How about you make the first move? We're the adults in the classroom. We're the ones who actually should know better. And so we need to model what we want in our classroom. Like I said, I tend to be sarcastic, and sometimes I get too sarcastic. And I make mistakes, and I'm very quick to apologize in front of my classes, because that's what I want to model. That if they hurt another person's feelings, I want them to apologize. So I model it. When I do something stupid and step over the lines, then I need to apologize. And if I did it in front of the whole class, I apologize in front of the whole class. But the tricky thing with teaching chemistry is we're working with teenagers. And so kind of from having conversations with students and listening to them, because I want them to listen to me. So I listen to them first. And so in listening to them, I heard these things coming out consistently. That teenagers hate it when you treat them like a kid, and they hate it when you hold them to some impossible standard. That you say they should know better, and all that kind of stuff. I'll get that in a minute. So I have two rules that I came up with for dealing with teenagers that I think really simplify things. First, I will treat you like an adult until your actions seem otherwise. Meaning, I don't dismiss what they say, I listen. When I listen, I am actually really listening. When I'm interacting with them, I interact with them like an adult, like I expect behavior of them. I treat them with respect. I care. I'm reminded of, it's more kind of with the golden rule, but there's the old saying that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. That is so true of teaching. That when our students know that we care about them, then they begin to care what we know. They begin to care about our class and our content. And so I will treat my kids like adults. Now, when my students act like a pouting 5-year-old, I treat them like a pouting 5-year-old. If they're going to get all whiny with me, okay, nothing's more disgusting than a whiny adult. And I'm not going to take it out of a 15-year-old either. So if you want me to treat you like an adult, you need to act like one, and we're not going to whine and complain. I'm that person who, if you ask for something and I say no, and then you proceed to whine about it, the chances of you ever getting it just went to 0. I hate whining with a passion. I'm definitely not that teacher who gives in to whining, and I make that very clear to my students. All right, second rule. So I will treat you like an adult until you action seem otherwise, but I will not hold you to the standards of an adult, because they're kids. They're going to make mistakes. They're kids, they're teenagers. Like going back to the sarcasm thing. So I should know better, and it shouldn't cross the line into being too personal or too attacking in my sarcasm. I should know better. My students are still learning that line. And so sometimes my students come back at me with some sarcasm that's not appropriate. And so especially the first time it happens, I'm like, whoa, stop. That was over the line. Do you see how it was over the line? Yes, sir. No, sir. We'll talk about it. But I'm not going to punish them. I'm just going to teach them. Now, if it happens again, or becomes a repetitive problem, then we got some consequences coming. But when they make mistakes the first time, that's going to happen. They're kids, they're teenagers. You know, once again, another thing that drove me nuts when I was an administrator was teachers saying, well, they should know better. Why? Did you teach them? I mean, I think this one in particular that I'm remembering was they should have known better than like how to address a teacher after a bad test grade. Like, do you think their parents taught them how to deal with authority figures that they disagree with? Unlikely. So maybe you should coach them on how they should approach you when they make a bad test grade. Teach them. They're kids. They need to learn. Teach them how to do these social things, not just your content. That becomes important. But when it comes down to it, I'm convinced of this very thing. When we can teach when we get the heart of our students, we win the mind of our students. That's so critically important. That we can speak to that part of them, and we can speak to their hearts, and we can love the part of their heart. Now, once again, this doesn't mean being touchy-feely and huggy. What this means is when you were a kid, what did you want? You wanted someone to respect you, listen to you. You want a teacher who's willing to, if you don't understand, to take the time to explain it to you. You want that teacher who's willing to pause and stop to make sure you understand before they move on. You want that teacher who's going to encourage you to do better. I'm thinking about a girl I had last year. She started off the year as a low B, high C student. I think she was one of those ones who said, I can't do science. It's not my thing. I can't do math. But I worked with her throughout the course of the year. I encouraged her. I worked with her where her weaknesses were. I put her with partners that would encourage her and build her up. And by the end of the year, she was a solid middle A student. She went from a low B, high C student to a mid A range because she began to believe in herself. But the reason why she began to believe in herself is because I believed in her first. I went after her heart. I went after building her up. I went after making her stronger. And then she became stronger. Because when she knew that I was there for her, when she knew that I would help her with things, that there's no such thing as a stupid question in my classroom, that when she came up to me and asked for a question, I wasn't going to be like, oh, why are you interrupting me? I was like, hey, how can I help you? Or when she made a mistake, I wasn't like, how could you make that stupid mistake again? I was like, oh, do you see what you did here? Oh, you got it mostly right. You just missed this one small thing. See how we can fix this? Just using encouraging words, treating them how we want to be treated. Treating them like adults, but not holding them to that standard. All those things speak to the hearts of our students. And when our students know we care for them, we win their minds. If you can win your students' hearts, their minds will surely follow. Of this, I'm convinced. I've seen it year after year after year. So recapping our strategies. Strategy 1, you got to know your stuff. You got to be prepared to deliver it. Strategy 2, you got to speak their language. Speak in a language that they can understand, because if you don't speak in their language, they're going to be confused. And when they're confused, they're going to check out. You got to go slow enough and in small enough pieces for them to digest. Because if they can't get it, if it's too hard, you lost them. You got to manage distractions in your classroom. Because when you manage those distractions, you are helping them to focus and come back in and stay focused. With that strategy primarily, you are battling against things which steal away their engagement. Number 5, pursue their hearts. Just think about your friends. When you go to a party or you're around a group of people, who are the people you listen to? Who are the people you want to really interact with? They're the people who know you, who pursue your heart, who know you and value you as you. Now, those are the people we want to be around. We don't want to be around the person who needs to always be technically correct. We don't want to be around the person who's a bully and puts us down. We want to be with somebody that we feel respected by. And so that's their heart. Because once again, when we win our students' hearts, we've won their engagement. We've won their minds. They're going to want to listen to us, or they're a lot more willing to listen to us. And so that's our 5 strategies. And these tips are real. I mean, chemistry is a tough class without our kids checking out. And we can take these proactive strategies and apply them in our class, and we can make engagement so much better. These aren't just theory. These are things I've done in my own class throughout my teaching career that I've seen great dividends from. Because once again, I would say the winning their hearts is probably the core foundation of my teaching philosophy. Because if you win your hearts, you're probably going to have 95% engagement or better, because they know you're there for them, and it makes all the difference. These apply to new teachers, grizzled veterans, you name it, across the board. And once again, it applies across personality types and teaching types and all of that. So what's this all about? It's about being proactive, not reactive. That so much of student engagement is not waiting for them to be confused or lost or whatever. Especially if you're past your first year of teaching. If you're into your second, third, fourth, or more year of teaching chemistry, then you know where the kids are going to struggle. So you can be proactive beforehand and say, hey, you know what, we're coming up on nomenclature. Maybe this year I need to think about how I'm going to speak it in their language, how I'm going to break it down into pieces, how I'm going to pace it out a little bit slower to make sure they learn before we add the next layer so that they don't just fall into a sloppy mess. Think about that, how to be proactive going into where you're going. It's about engaging your students, obviously. But here's to know about engaging your students that I think we miss. Engaging our students allows us to expend less energy in the classroom. That when our students are engaged, they're with us. When we allow them to talk and chit chat and be disruptive, we exert a lot more energy teaching. And then we exert a lot more emotional energy teaching. And that just wears on us. Same thing with, when we make a big deal out of the pep rallies and things like that, it just wears on us. And we do better if we deal with student engagement, if we're proactive about it, our teaching day will suck less out of us. I love teaching, it gives me energy, but I'm still tired at the end of the day. And the more I deal with student engagement, the more energy I have at the end of the day. And that's so critical, because I love my students and I love teaching, but after this year, I don't see those students again. But my kids at home and my wife, I see all the time. And so if I can have more energy at the end of the day spent with them, that makes student engagement all that much more important. And so that's part of the critical thing. And so I'm not sure why you showed up today, but it really comes down to this. And this is what I really want you to learn out of this, is that I want you to get this one thing, that you can do it. There's a scene from Waterboy movie I remember as a kid growing up, but just, they're about to face the biggest, baddest team that's never lost. It's kind of like, you can do it. You can do it. You can take your worst student engagement thing, exercise these strategies, and work at it. And you can do it. You can make a difference in your classroom, which once again pays back to you afterwards. Because at teaching high school chem, we are so much about not just you in the classroom, but you outside of the classroom. We want to give you the resources and the support to be the best chemistry teacher you can be, to grow in your mastery of teaching chemistry, so that you can be so good here in the classroom that you have more time and more energy left in your tanks to take home to be with your friends and family. That's what we're passionate about. I'm passionate not just about my teaching chemistry, I'm passionate about my family. And the more energy I can have for them, the better. And that's what I want to offer y'all. And so we at Teaching High School Chem have a membership. That membership will be open for the next 3 days to accept new members. And we have a basic membership that's just all of our resources, meaning all of our handouts, which means all the student handouts, all the quizzes, all the review sheets, and all the tests. And you may be like, well, I can get handouts and stuff from, Teacher Pay Teachers or from this place over here. This is a full year stuff. It covers all the major content units, meets most of the standards I've read, or all the standards that I've read. We meet them, covering everything, and just really trying to cover that content all in one place and all consistent. Because unfortunately, when you start grabbing things elsewhere online, A, you spend hours hunting it down. B, the quality is mixed. And C, the way things are phrased or worded are going to be different. And that makes it difficult when you're trying to teach a lesson. It adds that level of confusion, which brings down to engagement. And so it's all comprehensive, all cohesive, things that I've put together throughout my entire teaching career, just a whole year's worth of stuff. The plus takes that and adds to it. And the plus level, you get my teaching notes. Plus, you get instructional videos that go through the notes and say, hey, this is where kids are going to struggle, and this is how you deal with it. Here's how you break it down and how you pace it. Just trying to give you those ideas. I give you some suggested pacing. The plus also gets keys for all the grading to kind of make the grading go faster. You get weekly kind of mentoring coaching calls with me, question and answer time, every Tuesday afternoon that I do. Then you have access to our free private Facebook group, because that's a place where we can encourage one another. We can post our wins. We can post our questions. And it's important that that's a place where we can post our questions, because maybe you don't need my answer. Maybe you need, Sue's answer. Maybe Sue sees it in a way that better fits you than the way I see it. And having a community for that makes a big difference. And so that's where the plus plan comes in. So how much will it cost me? For me, the cost is less about money and more about what it costs not to do this. If we could save you an hour a day where you're not having to work as hard on prepping, you're not having to make your own handouts, you're not having to write your own tests. If we could save you an hour a day, that's 180 hours over the course of a year. That's over 6 days time that you could have with your friends and family that you weren't having before. To me, that's almost priceless, and thankfully we're not charging priceless. Because like I said, so what it'll cost you is what it'll cost you not to do this. What it'll cost you not to join the membership is time with your family. And so when it comes down to it's the pro plan, it's plus plan, it's $37 a month. That is, once again, all the resources and all the support. That's, even with that, you also have direct access to me to email me or message me at any time. If you have questions, you can just directly ask me. And then if you need a resource that I haven't already made, I can make you a new resource. You need a lab for something? Hey, I'll make you a lab. I can do the research and do the legwork and figure that out. That's part of the plus plan. The basic plan comes up to $22 a month, something around 75 cents a day. And so that's what we're offering. Once again, it's not just the resources. I wish I was all about the plus plan, because that's just what I'm after. I'm after giving you every resource you need plus more. I want to help you to implement it. And once again, that's another thing that sets us apart from the other things you'll find online, is that we are here to help you implement these resources. Now, this is only available through Monday evening. So Monday evening at midnight, I'll close the doors. And I'm just doing a real quick, short little opening right here in October. And so you got a little bit of time to think about this and make that decision. All right, so time for the free bonus. Free bonus is here at teachinghighschoolchem.com/member/covalent. If you go there, that lesson plan is there for you. And once again, it's everything I have. It's what my Plus members site looks like. So it's got the lesson plans, the notes, the teaching notes, everything you possibly need, all the handouts, reviews, tests. The only thing it doesn't have are the keys. So it does not have the keys to help you do the answers. Okay, and the main reason being, this is Covalent page is open to the public, meaning you don't have to log into my site to get to it. And the worst thing that could happen would be for students to somehow get hold of the keys, and that would be a tragedy in my mind. We actually had that happen at one of my old schools where the kids got keys to the test bank that the teacher was using, and it was a big mess for most of the junior class. And so I don't want that to happen. And so that all being said, at Teaching High School Chem, we're here for you. I want to help you. So that I'll send out an email with that link. Then if you're interested in our membership, just go to teachinghighschoolchem.com. And that'll take you straight to where it talks about our memberships and where you can register for that. Then, like I said, teachinghighschoolchem.com/member/covalent is where those resources are for you.